Let me begin with this. Last week, you were on Twitter talking about Donald Trump's economic plan. You were subsequently out on Twitter urging people to read it and recommending it as the solution to America's economy. Yesterday, you were sparring with Mark Cuban on Twitter about the presidential campaign, Hillary versus Donald. And now I understand you're talking about starting a super PAC that would effectively be pro-Trump. Does this mean that Carl Icahn is finally, some would say, about to throw his weight and perhaps money around in this presidential campaign?
Well, I think I made it pretty clear all through the campaign, right at the beginning, that I think Trump's policies are possibly the only thing that's going to save us from going down this decline that we're in on productivity, which is very important in this country. I really think that we've had a tremendous decline in capital spending, which everybody knows. I'm not making that up, and a major decline in productivity growth. Now, if you think about that, I think one of the major reasons for it, and I'm a little microcosm of it, is that some of these regulatory agencies, the EPA in particular, and certain things, I'm not against regulation. I think certain regulation is very important. I'm not even against some of the financial regulation that you have. I think that that some of the investment banks really caused a lot of problems in '08. But I am against what I consider to be just arbitrary and capricious regulation, such as what the EPA is now doing concerning refineries. So that's a microcosm of what I'm talking about, which absolutely scares business. Business looks at this as a war between business and government, and therefore, Erik, today, what happens is that a CEO, and even a mediocre CEO, and I'm certainly no fan of mediocre CEOs. There are very good ones, but many mediocre ones that go in and say, okay, we got the great advantage of zero interest rates, and what we're going to do is borrow money, buy back stock instead of investing in capital, which gets their stock up. They're vested. They make 50, 100 million bucks or whatever they make, and they go play golf the rest of their lives. And the worker, the middle class worker, suffers greatly from it, which they are today. And you need someone to come in with a fresh broom, and in certain cases with these regulatory agencies, take hold of what they're doing and showing business that we're not against them.
Okay.
And that's why I'm for Trump, and that's the whole story in a nutshell.
Well, I understand that. What I was getting at with the question, and perhaps I didn't articulate it well enough, is I'd like to know more, and I think there are lots of other people who'd like to know more about what you're going to do beyond endorsing Donald Trump the way that you have, talking up his economic plan the way that you have. Are we going to see a super PAC? If we do, what's it going to do?
I am considering it at this moment in time. What I am doing at this moment in time is really moving against some of the regulations that the EPA has. They're a bit arcane. They've been wiped under the rug, but I think they're completely and totally illegal, where they're going against refineries. And you're going to see in this country a lot of smaller refineries go bankrupt as a result of these regulations, where these refineries are simply, to make it simple on this TV show because it's a little more arcane, are penalized for something that they can't do. They're saying that they're responsible for blending with ethanol. That's fine, except nobody will buy the gasoline that we blend with ethanol. I own refineries. Obviously, I have an agenda here. But, that doesn't matter. Nobody was really standing up to what the EPA is doing. So that's just one little example of what is wrong with our economy, and that's all I'm saying. So I'm really getting involved in that at this moment in time, and I didn't go on the economic committee, as you maybe know or don't know, because it gives me the room to do a PAC, and we're considering that too, and I think we will do one. But I don't want to say I'm definitely doing it until I am doing it. But I am saying that we came out with a big paper, and we're going to continue really literally to fight what the EPA is doing. We think it's illegal, but more than that,
Carl,
I think it's reprehensible.
It's one thing to write a letter to the EPA. It's another thing to start a super PAC that would challenge some of the regulations that you find so chafing. It's another thing, wouldn't you agree, to conflate some concerns that you have about specific and, as you put it, arcane, weedy regulations that are in place governing refineries and renewable fuels with a whole presidential campaign, isn't it?
It certainly is. It certainly is. But they're not mutually exclusive, obviously. And I don't want to say on this program that I'm going to invest $20 million in a super PAC until, as we speak, I am talking I'm actually talking tonight to the people that would be working with me on the PAC. However, being that said, I don't want to say something here that you could call me back a month from now, 2 months from now. How come you never did what you said you were going to do? So I'm not
Understood.
I'm not going to say it to you now. I am saying to you that we are going to be in a shall we say, argument with the EPA. And don't get me wrong, because I believe some of the stuff the EPA does is salutary. I think it's necessary, in fact. But what they're doing here, I honestly can't understand it. You know, I've been in fights with companies all my life, all my business life, where I think what they do is wrong. I think it's dysfunctional. But there's always a good argument. There is no a good argument for what the EPA is doing. I mean, this is about, you know, I fought U.S. Steel in the old days. I fought with Tom Warner. I fought, as you know, with so many companies. And, you know, at the risk of being immodest, made billions and billions and billions for investors. Now, if you're going to say to me, well, Carl, didn't you make a lot yourself? Well, sure I did. That's you know, this is what the economy, this is what our capitalist system is about, you know, incentive. But what I'm trying to tell you is I've never seen anything as absurd as what the EPA is doing here.
Let me ask you this then. What matters to you more right now, today, as we speak? Making or somehow forcing the EPA to make these changes, whether it's through the power of your pen, the people who might be watching this conversation, or a super PAC you could start, or, so it's on the one hand, I'm asking you, what's more important? Getting the EPA to change these rules or putting Donald Trump in office? I kind of want to know where they stand on your list of priorities.
They're not mutually exclusive.
No, I recognize that.
And again, I'd very much like to see Trump win this, because I think he is the only hope to save business in America the way we know it. I really mean that, Eric. I think that right now our economy is really not doing well. You see, GDP is not going up. I could give you a lot of reasons. But the most important is that the middle-class worker does not have good jobs. His unemployment numbers are not accurate in one way, that to be a lot of these guys have left the workforce, and two, these jobs aren't paying that well. You know, so I am saying that the middle class, that is why you saw this uprising, you know, for Bernie Sanders, and you see it for Trump, and you see Brexit, and you see what's going on in Italy. I think there's an undercurrent of great distress in our global economies. You know, this 1%, people resent it, and they resent government for allowing it to happen. And by the way, the EPA in this rule, in this very small rule, is helping big oil, which I don't even think they understand they're helping. They're helping big oil, and they're helping a couple of very wealthy companies make a fortune and putting the smaller refiners out of business. Okay, that alone you could say so, big deal. But that is why there is distrust of what is happening in government, and this is what I'd like to do something about. And if I believe I can make a difference with Trump, I'll do it. But I have to really believe I'm going to make a difference.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because you threw a number out there for what you might spend in a super PAC, $20 million. What would it take for you to spend more money on the Trump campaign? Because to my knowledge, thus far, you've only spent $100,000, which may be a lot to some people, but to a Carl Icahn isn't a great sum.
In certain ways, I supported him. I mean, you know, when they had that... When you had that rally for the veterans, which they're great, the veterans are important anyway, so I would have done it, but I gave $500,000 immediately when they asked me to at that evening thing. You know, when he went against Megyn Kelly, I think it is. So, in other words, I did a few other things. But being that said, I'm not looking for praise for that. What I am saying to you, though, is I want to really believe that Donald has a shot to win.
And you don't?
I do believe it. I do believe it. And I'll say this publicly, and I'll say it to him.
But the way you say it, it sounds as though you're trying to persuade yourself that he has a shot.
Well, you know something, and maybe I shouldn't be saying it on Bloomberg, but I will say it, that I do believe that Donald has a great shot if he sticks to the positives, not so much to the negatives. Meaning, if he just talks about the economy and what I'm saying, and tell the worker in those swing states, hey, look, here's the thing, Hillary Clinton's making all these promises. I mean, I'm going to give you broadband for everybody. I'm going to do tunnels and bridges and all that. Where's she going to get the money? You've got a divided Congress and gridlock. She's not going to get the money so she can promise anything. And to some extent, you could say Donald can promise it too. But the one thing Donald can deliver is he can change the regulatory agencies as president. He doesn't need Congress. You got to look at things you don't need Congress for. He doesn't need them about immigration. And by the way, I think it's a little bit ludicrous to let people come into this country from the Middle East that tell you that they're looking to, that ISIS is telling you they're looking to kill you, and let these people come in. So these are the things he could deliver, and that's what he's got to stick to. But
why isn't he listening to you? I have to presume that you're offering him this advice. You and he saw each other this past weekend. Did you not tell him?
Well, this weekend it was pretty quick. I mean, I came in, left, but I do talk to him. And I am going to keep talking to him about it. And and he knows this too, that I think Donald is great when he speaks about these things. I think his economic message 2 Mondays ago was terrific. And if he sticks to that, he's going to win. But I am going to, people are telling him, hey, you're down in the polls because forget all this, negativity and arguments, and even negativity where it is factual, you do. And so that's one reason I won't do a PAC that's negative against Hillary Clinton. I do a PAC that's positive about Donald Trump and his economic, beliefs. And this is where you're asking, and maybe I'm saying too much. I think Donald's great. I think he'd be a great president. I believe it. A lot of my friends don't. A lot of my friends are mad at me for this. But I believe it, and I believe he would do it. He is exactly what this country needs. But what he has to do is get that economic message across instead of just talking glibly about issues that really don't mean a hell of a lot.
Carl, why isn't he listening to you? Why isn't he listening to Tom Barrack, who told me the very same thing yesterday?
Well, you know why? I don't know. Ask him.
Well, that leaves you in kind of a problematic position, doesn't it?
Look, Erik, you got strong points. A strong point about Donald is he's got a strong personality, believes in himself, and that's really good. I know what he is. He will build a consensus in Congress. Hey, look, the negatives and criticism you can make about anyone, but that is what I think is becoming a problem. And so if he would just get on that positive note about this economy, he'll win this election. Because the middle-class American, I believe there's a great undercurrent. They are very disabused about what's going on. Hey, look, I invest a great deal of money. I own 20 companies. I've turned them around. They were negative. They were dying. We cleaned them up. We have 93,000 people working for us at IEP, But here's the issue, that right now, literally, I've cut down capital spending, and I'm scared of it when I see what the EPA is doing on this stuff. And if I'm scared, can you imagine what all these smaller businesses are? They are killing the smaller business, and Hillary Clinton hasn't said one word against some of these crazy regulations.
Well,
and I'm not the only one saying a lot of the regulations, they've run amok. They've run amok. Now,
you may be right that
but I want to make it clear, there's some great regulations, there's some great regulators, and you need regulation. In fact, I say that to the consternation of some of the Wall Street friends I have, that you do need it. And if you had better regulation, you wouldn't have had to wait. But what they're doing today has gone crazy, and that's why there are no jobs for the middle class, because there's no capital spending. You have worn-out tools.
You may be right, Carl, that Donald Trump can, if he were in the White House, do some things on his own, exercising similar executive authority that the president has over the last several years about immigration, you pointed out, and certainly in some respects about regulation. But he's made similar promises to Hillary Clinton when it comes to trade agreements and also on infrastructure. So are they not similarly false promises if he has to turn to Congress to get help on those fronts?
Okay, a great point. And yes, you're right. Every president, you could go back to George Washington probably, has made promises they can't keep, okay? And I think Donald believes he'll keep them because Donald believes he'll build a consensus in Congress, but it's a question. I agree exactly what you're saying, and I think he has a better chance of delivering on those promises than Hillary Clinton. So therefore, let's look at what he will definitely deliver. What he will definitely deliver, and this is the point you should be making and you should make, what he will definitely deliver to the middle-class worker who's worried about his job and is not manufacturing. And by the way, when you stop manufacturing in a country, all this other stuff is nonsense. You know, you have a service economy, so we're going to just tweet to each other. What are we going to do, text each other? That's all. It's great service economy. Eventually, our currency will go to hell, and we're going to lose our hegemony. So let's get back to my point. He can no promise, and 100% he'll keep this promise, because I know how he feels about it, that he's going to stop these crazy regulations. He could do that first day in office. I've talked to him about it. I've talked to a team he's got about it. That is 100%. He can stop a lot of the crazy immigration, which I think is crazy. People, so with that you could argue. I think the regulations that you have, I mean, if I wanted to go in to the stuff that he's putting these smaller refineries out of business for no reason, the EPA has put them out, for absolutely no reason, I will say to you that he will stop that. That's 100%. That's what you have to tell the swing state voter, the middle-class voter who wants jobs and is sick and tired of the status quo today. And that's what he could do, and if he does that, he'll win. And one day, I mean, on this program, it's difficult to go in how insane, Eric, I can show you some of these regulations are. Look, I fought U.S. Steel. I fought Time Warner. I fought all these companies that you know about. And again, at the risk of being modest, made billions for shareholders, made a lot of money for myself. Nothing wrong with that. But I will tell you, I've never seen anything as idiotic as some of these rules that are being promulgated right now by the EPA. Okay, so that's a quintessential example of what's wrong. But there are many other examples of what's wrong. And that's why I've been saying that.
What's another good one? A couple more anyway.
What's wrong with the agencies? Look at the NLRB. Look at some of the rulings they make concerning labor. I mean, so people are afraid really to deal with. I would tell you, I have a lot of unions work for me. They're fine. Some are terrible, and then some just go off the reservation. The NLRB protects them. Okay, but hey, I'm not against the NLRB. I mean, I came from the streets of Queens. And I really do sympathize with workers. And I've got many union workers. People think I'm too tough, but I'm not. I'm a tough guy, but I'm not against that. But I am against some of these. We've gone way too far in areas like that. Now, the FTC does a pretty good job at what they do. I'm not against them per se. I'm not fighting every regulation. In fact, I believe in a lot of regulations, and I've had a lot of fights, as I said, disagreements with some of my
as you were saying,
on Wall Street, because I think you do need regulation. I think they brought down the investment bankers.
Carl,
responsible. Okay, so
if you're so certain that, I want to talk to you about the economy for a moment, because
sure,
if you're certain that Trump's economic message is going to resonate with people, if he could just get beyond the negativism, as it were, and talk about the positives and talk about the things that he's going to do, then he would have that shot that you believe he has at the White House. Why is it that, and this may sound like a simplistic question, it's not intended to be, why is it that the stock market is where it is? With valuations so high that I noticed in a letter that, or at least in a statement that you made with your son Brett earlier this month, that you don't feel confident making any large investments.
I absolutely, Eric. I think the market, and I've said it before, hey, look, I have hedges on. I was more hedged than I ever was. I will tell you, there's certainly good companies. It's way overvalued at 20 times the S&P, and I'll tell you why. A lot of it is a result of zero interest rates. It's just what I said. You have zero interest and a lot of buybacks. Money is not going into capital. So think of it as a rich family that just has a lot of decides we're just going to have a lot of fun. We're going to sit around the pool and we'll keep printing up IOUs to the town. We got a good name. You keep doing it until you go broke. And this is what's happening in our economy. Zero interest rates are building huge bubbles. You have retirees that saved $1 million, $500,000. They call me, friends of mine. Hey, what do I do with my money? I have to buy stocks. I said, well, why are you buying stocks? Well, I can't live on 0%. I said, what's better, 0% or lose to 30%? And one day you can lose it. But they're doing it. You've got these bubbles building in real estate. In New York alone, the real estate market's through the roof. It's coming down somewhat now. It's absurd. And therefore, I think the market is at literally very high levels because of zero interest rates. And if you really look at it, you know, the dollar is pretty strong right now, which is going to hurt international earnings. The S&P, you know, they live on international earnings. That's going to be hurt. There's going to be a day of reckoning here. I've seen it many times in my life. When things look good, they look great. You go into the sky. But that's when you have to really pull down and really stop buying. Being that said, I'm not going to tell you it's going to happen tomorrow, next week, even next month, even next year possibly. But it's going to happen, and you have to change the direction of our economy. So I can't say it plainer than that. And Trump will change it and bring in and rein in some of the abuses and get capital spending on. Look, Hillary Clinton said it. I mean, she said it pretty well. Let's unleash the great power of our companies, except the next sentence. But we're going to tax them, and we're going to regulate them, but, we're going to get them spending. Well, so it's a mishmash of contradictions.
Your point on capital spending may be bang on. I'm not an economist, and so it's not my position to say either way. But I do have to point out, Carl, that there are a few cynics out there hearing you complain about companies levering up to buy back stock, who remember, unless I'm mistaken, that you have asked companies to do just that on at least one notable occasion, if not
Erik,
more than one.
You're very right, and let me address it. Apple, we said they should buy back stock, and they made a great deal of money doing it because Apple had $200 billion sitting there, and they had extra money. It didn't affect their capital spending, one iota. And their stock was dirt cheap when I told them to. And as you know, I mean, look, I don't want to just be boasting, but we bought Apple at one of the cheap prices, and I told Tim Cook, you should just buy back your stock. You have all this cash sitting there, and I think I was somewhat instrumental in getting them to do it. But that doesn't mean that a lot of these companies that are over-levered today and really not really what I consider to be making true earnings, borrowing money and buying back stock. This is making a false market, but worse than that, it's costing them. It's causing them to have worn-out tools for their workers. It's costing them the ability to go into new things, and therefore they should not be buying back stock. So it's like saying you have two sons, and maybe one is sickly or has asthma or something, and the other son is in great shape and a great athlete. So it's okay for him to go swimming for 3 hours. It's not okay for the kid with asthma or not feeling well to go do it. Therefore, there are companies that should buy back stock. There are good regulators. There are good regulations. Same idea. There are good CEOs. But that doesn't mean that there's a broad brush here that you're going to use, and you can't do that. At least I can't do it. So that's my answer to that one.
You say, Carl, that a day of reckoning will come for the stock market. You can't say whether it's going to be this week, this month, even this year or next year. Let's talk about the factors that you believe would precipitate such a correction. What's going to cause stocks to fall?
Erik, I think I've been talking about it through this whole interview. One of the things that's causing it to fall is happening right under your nose, that we have no capital spending. What do I say?
Yes.
None. Capital spending is going way down. In a society like us, manufacturing is important. I don't care. Sooner or later, you can't just keep tweeting to each other. You can't text to each other. We say we're a service economy. Everybody says, that's great. Oh, we're a service economy. What does that mean? That we text more to each other. Sooner or later, everybody is just going to sit and text to each other, and isn't that wonderful? So why should anybody work? Just sit there and text to each other or watch TV. So I am saying to you, this is what is happening as we speak. There is no capital spending is down. Obviously, capital spending. In the last 2 years, I mean, it's just down 4% in the last quarter, which is unheard of when you don't have a recession. Okay, productivity. Productivity has not grown. In fact, it's the lowest point it's ever been as far as growth goes. These are very important things in a capitalistic system. And so unless you have a dictatorship, you're going to go the way of Cuba. Well, Cuba was a dictatorship, but it still went that way. But then you're going to go the way of Venezuela, Argentina. You're going to be in a major problem if you keep doing it.
I realize, and I think most people realize, that unhealthy economic conditions are not a recipe for rising stock prices. But for stocks to go down, people like you are going to have to start selling and either moving your money into fixed income or into cash. You said that you're more hedged than you've ever been, but apart from a couple of small dispositions, you're not selling yet, right?
Well, no, not right. It's obviously not helping my position, but I have to admit I'm short a great deal of the S&P, but I'm long more than I'm short. I mean, I can't help it because I own so many companies that we own. We have assets in, and we've got investments in, and each one is unique. I mean, we got a rail car fleet that stretches from New York to Ohio. I mean, we got debt on it and all that. These are companies I built over the years, Erik, and now you're proud of them. We own a number of companies that I just bought Pep Boys. I think there's a future in that. I won't go into that on this TV. But that doesn't mean I own these companies and I think they'll survive and do okay. Look, I own the refineries, and we're unhappy about what the hell's going on. But look, I bought it at a cheap price, and we got the power to stay alive. But it's going to be very bad in that industry. But to get back to my point, I don't think it has to be people like me. I think it's just built on itself. I've seen it happen before, where you suddenly start realizing that these companies really don't have true earning power, and then fund managers start selling. And once that toboggan slide happens, it's going to be pretty bad. And I think it will one day. But, there is nobody in the world, there's too many variables to be able to predict when and where it's going to happen. That's just an insane way to spend your time. So I will just tell you that we have a problem, and Hillary Clinton will make it worse because she believes in big government. But you must, and she said it, unleash the power of companies in this country. We're a capitalistic system, and you have to have companies that invest and have faith in their governments. And over the last 8 years, we've become more and more at war with our governments, our companies, and you don't see them really spending. Now, you can say technology companies are spending, but when is that going to come to fruition? It may be years and years away. Actually, ironically, it's happened a little sooner than you think because you got more and more people walking around using the iPhones and whatever. But and of course, you've got globalization to help you somewhat. But I think, we could go into it for hours and hours. I think that one of the problems you have is that you were importing cheap goods from China all these years, and that's going to stop. So there's going to be all kinds of problems we could go into, and I spend hours and hours thinking about it. I'm a bit of a workaholic, and I read about it a lot. But, and by the way, I am not the only who I consider to be real smart guys saying just what I'm saying. I mean, if you read some of these guys, they're pretty damn negative, and
I've heard it myself.
They're the guys I respect the most, It's the ones that are negative. So
I've heard it myself. You make the point again about regulation. Absent the kind of regulatory relief that you're looking for, what do? You own these refineries through this company, which you control, called CVR, correct?
Yes.
So can you use CVR to do something else? Can you do a roll-up in the refinery business, buy up some other independent refiners to try and find some economies of scale that help you weather what you term this regulatory storm of sorts?
It's a sort of a unique and almost insane problem. The EPA, it goes back a few years, but the EPA has ruled in their great wisdom that we, the refineries, are responsible to deliver RINs. We're responsible. Think of it this way. We are responsible to blend a certain amount of ethanol. I'm not against ethanol. I'm not for ethanol. But we have to blend it. Now, that's absurd on the face of it because the the people that use the ethanol, the gas stations for the most part, are owned by big oil or owned by these huge chains. So those guys say, well, hey, we're not going to let you blend because we're not going to buy your blended gasoline. So you say to the EPA, how can I be responsible for blending when I can't sell my blended gasoline? They say, too bad. So they say you have to deliver to us a certain amount, what they call RINs.
RINs. No, I understand the problem, and it is a thorny one. And as you have pointed out in your letter to the EPA, there's speculation going on in that market. Others have pointed out that there's fraud going on in that market. And I don't want to get, if you don't mind, Carl, any more into it because it is weedy. But what about the alternatives? What do you do with a company like CVR? If you can't, you're not about to get regulatory change tomorrow. You know that.
I have to tell you, we're a strong company, IEP is a strong company. But I'm not telling you that we're not going to have troubles, as are many small refineries. So what's going to happen is they'll go bankrupt or taken over by big oil. When that happens and you're taken over, you get an oligopoly. So what the EPA is doing, I believe inadvertently, is doing what big oil could never do themselves, get rid of its competition. The FTC wouldn't let them do it. I'd like to see the FTC step in and stop this crazy RIN business. So they are doing for big oil what big oil could never do for themselves. So what's going to happen is, in the next few years, these guys are on their backs, and we will be too. Look, I made a lot of money on this investment over the years. I'm not crying, and certainly nobody's going to cry for me. But what I am saying to you is big oil will take over these companies, and then all of a sudden we'll be facing another problem as gasoline prices go through the roof. That's one thing that may happen. Another thing that's good. But what is happening is, and I keep saying this, rulings like this, what is understood, and a lot of companies, thousands of CEOs understand the problem. They say one day a regulatory agency, EPA, waves its wand and we're bankrupt or almost bankrupt or losing a fortune. Why the hell should I invest in more capital? Why should I invest in more machinery? Therefore, we can't compete, and therefore the middle class does not have manufacturing jobs, and we now say, well, we're not a manufacturer, we're a service company. Now, the thing that goes for this country, as you pointed out, is we're a reserve currency, but I don't know how long you could depend on that. So I am just saying that sooner or later there's going to be a massive problem, I think. Anyway.
I don't see you backing down on the EPA issue. You pointed out earlier that you've gone to battle with many a CEO over the years, and I'm thinking of last year when you called for the breakup of AIG. AIG came back with another plan, and today they continue to execute on that plan, selling United Guarantee for some $3.5 billion. My question to you...
Yeah, and I'm proud of him for that. And, Peter Hancock and I don't see eye to eye on everything, but I really think that he and I see eye to eye on what they should be doing at AIG, and I supported him just recently when a few people were really wanting me to really go to battle, and I think he takes it very seriously. I'm hopeful that he's going to do a lot more of this, and now there's a company, Erik, that should do buybacks, because as they get more cash, their stock is so cheap related to what they can buy it for, and they do have that money around, and there's no machinery they can buy. AIG doesn't buy machinery. There is a company that should do buybacks. So, okay, each one is unique. Everyone shouldn't. I can't say every company should do it. That's a good one that you just mentioned. I can't say more because we're on the board. I just do believe, hopefully, that Peter, I can't say more than that, should do buybacks. I'm saying wearing the hat of an investor. I'm not wearing the hat of being on the board,
You were, this was I won't call it hostile because maybe it didn't quite get to that level in a technical way, but it was an adversarial position. You're now on the board. Is he moving? You're saying that he's moving fast enough that he's brought you around to the idea that AIG can take this sort of incrementalist approach by selling assets and then returning capital to shareholders?
I'm going to tell you something sort of interesting that you might not believe. That, I go into these companies, I see unique things they should be doing. I think in certain cases we fought with the CEO for a while, and then we become very friendly. I'm not telling you we have Christmas dinner together, but we take eBay. with Donahoe. You know, we were against splitting it up. Suddenly he said, hey, Carl, you're right. Let's split it up. And splitting it up was great for shareholders. Look at PayPal. PayPal's a great company. So they little by little, you know, it's funny, Tom Warner did just what we said. It took 5 years with Bruce Wasserstein wrote a great paper.
So hang on a second. Are you saying that Hancock's going to come around to your idea that the company needs to be broken up into three?
I'm not even saying that, because every one of my ideas doesn't have to be followed to the letter. If Hancock does a general thing, which I believe should be done, okay, I'm just talking general, that if you have a company there that has great assets, some of them, I've said this publicly so I can say it, legacy assets, they cannot make as much money as other insurance companies on a lot of these legacy assets. They should be sold. And AIG obviously sells at a lower ratio than a lot of other insurance companies. I think once that is done, I think we have a good P&C company. It doesn't have to, and the life company itself, yeah, I think part of that life company should be sold, so certainly part of it in Japan. So these are things I'm saying. You know, I've said it before. I'm not going to get into what the board is saying.
Are you still telling Peter that he should fight the civic designation?
He should fight the civic designation. You know what? I can't go into more than that, because that's getting into the board thing. And I can't. I really
no, that's
shouldn't
fair.
Be talking. I shouldn't be talking as much.
No, that's
as I
fair.
am about
That's
it.
fair.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about Allergan, though. You just took a new position in Allergan. It was disclosed, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday. What do you want to see happen there? Because, as you know, Dan Loeb is in Allergan, and John Paulson is in Allergan, at least as of the end of June. Is it just to sit back and see what those guys can do, or do you have a different plan?
I really can't talk about it. I can't talk if I'm. You know, I don't talk about what I'm buying or what I'm selling. I want to be clear. But Allergan is a unique situation that fell apart for
the Pfizer deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Pfizer deal wasn't all that meaningful. It fell apart. Pfizer, and it was tarred by the brush of Valiant. And it is not Valiant. Okay, it's a separate, different company. The Valiant. Brentford is a great, excellent CEO. I worked with him at Forrest. We made a fortune at Forrest once he got to be the CEO. And so I look at him as a great CEO. He knows what he's doing. And with the stock, you know, when I sold Allergan, you know, after Forrest, we made a great deal of money with it. Finally got that done. And then when I sold it, and then it went higher. I said, hey, if it ever comes down, I'm going to do it. And then it fell apart, because it was really tarred by the brush of Valiant, and it is not Valiant, and therefore I bought the stock. I think it has a very good pipeline, but I'm not going to be on TV telling you people should buy or sell it, because I'm not even telling you what I'm doing. So, you know, I just want to be clear on Allergan. So, but I do think Brent is an excellent CEO, okay, and we've gotten along great. And look, a lot of these companies we get into, after a while they listen to the ideas we have. We've been around a long time, and we get friendly with them. It's not like a warfare all the time. You know, there's war and peace. The head of U.S. Steel, Dave Ribery, years and years ago said to me, war and peace, call war and peace. We had dinner every day every month for 7-8 years. You know, I hold companies for 8 years and 9 years. So I'm just telling you, there's war and there's peace. And you know, look at Motorola. Greg Brown was a great CEO there. Still is, I think. I don't own it anymore, but he's done a great job. He did a great job. So, you know, these are good people. And by the way, I think the EPA could be fine. I really think that they should just look at this thing and become rational. That's all I ask.
And you don't think that there's any chance that the EPA, as it's currently constituted, I'm just throwing it out there, might become more rational, might act differently in a Clinton administration?
Hey, I sure hope so. I hope that they change the obligated party. In other words, these RINs shouldn't be an obligation
on the refinery, the independent refiners.
And they ought to clean up the rig market. There's a rig market in it. And you know, in any other market, you know, set up by an agency, you don't allow hedge funds and speculators to come in and buy the securities like the RINs. In this case, you have a lot of smaller and maybe larger hoarders of this RINs, and it's absurdity, and it's putting these companies on. So you hope that somebody will get rational. Look, I've been able to, when you work hard on something, and we do have a bit of the bully pulpit, go in and get something done, get at least a rational trading in the RINs, make it unlawful for speculators to come in and hoard them. When you have an unregulated, this is the largest unregulated trading, I don't even know what you call it, a commodity in the world. You know, my CEO just said, he's a funny guy, he just told me on the phone, we were talking, he said, I told the New York Times in an interview, I hope it gets out, he says, you know, if Pablo Escobar were alive today, he wouldn't be doing coke, he'd be trading RINs.
Carl, one more before we go, if you don't mind. Federal mogul, you wanted to take it private. The minority stake that's held by the public that you don't currently own, it's trading above your last offer. Are you still interested?
I can't talk about that. You know that.
Okay.
Come on.
Hey, I had to try.